Gman Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
All right, people. Guest with me today, just back from Saudi Arabia, Anthony Joshua Alexander Usyk 2. Need no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Rob Tebbutt, how you doing from ID Boxing?
I'm very well, Gman. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good. Still trying to process. I can only imagine what it's like for you. You were there. I watched it on TV. I'm still trying to process it. What happened?
What happened indeed? I think first and foremost, it was a great fight. I really enjoyed the fight. I really enjoyed the first fight. I think Wilder Fury 3 got a lot of the headlines because of it, of the up and down nature of it. Everybody loves sort of a heavyweight slugfest. It was kind of like a modern day Foreman Lyle. But I really enjoyed Alexander Usyk versus Joshua 1. I thought it was a very high level fight. And it's kind of the more I watched that, I watched it a few times, particularly in the build up to the rematch. The more I watched it, the more I enjoyed it. And I felt like the rematch was better. I felt like the rematch was an even better fight. I thought Anthony Joshua boxed well. I thought he was more aggressive, more dialed in early. I thought he worked the body well. He wasn't just accepting the clinch like he did in the first fight. He was working while he was in there. He was able to back Alexander Usyk up at times, but like, unfortunately, he ran into a better fighter. Alexander Usyk is just a better boxer than Anthony Joshua, and I don't know if Joshua could ever really beat him. And I feel like there's no shame in that. Anthony Joshua, I think, has shown massive improvements throughout his career. He's developed into more of a boxer, kind of post Vladimir Klitschko, Andy Ruiz one, like that kind of version of Anthony Joshua. But a lot of heavyweights have done that. Vladimir Klitschko did that. Lennox Lewis did that. You know, fighters change their styles. Muhammad Ali, obviously for very different reasons, changed his style as he progressed. Yeah, I felt like it was a very, very good fight, a high level heavyweight fight, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very, very good fight, and I thought it was fairly close up until sort of 8-9. I mean, Joshua had the good ninth round, and then Usyk swept the last 3 rounds convincingly on my card, particularly the 10th. But I thought it was a really good fight, and I think both guys, for the boxing at least, deserve to come out with their reputations enhanced. Of course, we saw Anthony Joshua kind of, have a meltdown of sorts really in the ring afterwards. But I think when you've been Anthony Joshua and you've had the kind of scrutiny that he's had for such a period of time, it look, we all have our moments. I like flipped out the other day because my Uber was late and stuff, and I was going to be late. It's like such a small thing, such a nothing thing. And then you consider the pressure and the stress Anthony Joshua's been under. I don't think what he did was good. It was not acceptable at all. But he is human at the end of the day. He has apologized for it the next day. I felt like he did rob Alexander Usyk of his great moment, his moment in the spotlight, which was a real shame considering everything that Alexander Usyk has been going through over the last 6 months or so with the war in Ukraine. But yeah, as far as a boxing spectacle, as far as the fight itself went, I thought it was a very, very enjoyable heavyweight fight.
It was one of them fights that had me on the edge of my seat. Even though there was no real kind of major drama moments, it was one of them fights you just couldn't turn away from. I actually preferred this to the first one, and I felt that both guys stepped their game up. And I was really impressed with Anthony Joshua. I think that's in defeat, that's the best I've ever seen him.
I think, like I tweeted something earlier, I actually feel like it was maybe his best performance of his career. People mentioned the Vladimir Klitschko fight. I felt like he was losing that fight. I know the judges had him ahead at the time of the stoppage, but I thought he was losing that fight. He was dropped and he was almost stopped by Vladimir in that fight. And that was a Vladimir who had lost to Tyson Fury and then had, I think, 21 months out of the ring after that, or something like that, 18 months or something. And he was 41 years of age. So this is not Vladimir Klitschko at the end of his career. This is Alexander Usyk. Still, I mean, I know he's 35 and he's not at his prime weight. His prime weight is, of course, cruiserweight, but still, it's an elite level, pound for pound superstar. I feel like Joshua, my good friend Barry Jones, shout out Barry Jones, always talks about the fact that he always shout out to Barry Jones. He always talks about the fact he doesn't like rematch clauses. I don't like him either. There's no jeopardy with a rematch clause. If you have a rematch clause, you can go in there. I don't think any fighter is in the ring going, well, if I lose this one, I'll fight again. But subliminally and subconsciously, it has to play some sort of factor at some point. Whereas I think Saturday night in Saudi, I felt like Joshua really put it all on the line. People are saying, why didn't he do this? Why didn't he fight like Derek Chisora? Because he doesn't fight like Derek Chisora. He's never fought like Derek Chisora. But he was aggressive. He put his shots together well, and he left it all in there. And he just fell short against a better guy. And that was ultimately it on the night.
On the night, a lot was. I just wanted to ask you this because you were there. Would the heat have made a big issue to Anthony Josh? Because it looked warm in there from watching it on TV. Do you think that could have
No,
affected?
not at all. It's a highly air-conditioned facility. Everywhere you go in Saudi Arabia is. I think the whole time that I was in Saudi, I was there for 9 days. I think I probably only spent about 20 minutes outside a day, just going in and out of Ubers and in and out of cars. And it would have been very much the same for him. I know he was out there for a bit longer, and he would have, he's not a big fat media man like me. So he probably would have been going for walks and stuff like that and what have you. But no, it wouldn't have played any factor on the night. It was very cool in the arena. The aircon was kind of it's sort of like a standard thing in Saudi. No matter where you go, there's aircon. So yeah, I don't think the heat would have played any factor at all. I think it was just the guy in front of him. Usyk is a master at breaking you down mentally as well as physically. Puts you under that mental pressure, constantly moving, constantly giving you things to think about. And I feel like Joshua, he made a more aggressive start, so it was always going to be a case where the second half of the fight was always going to be kind of interesting to see how he handled those later rounds. Usyk has never lost the championship round, which is just a phenomenal stat. He's boxed, when he boxed Myris Bradus, the chips were down for him in the championship rounds. He won those rounds. The first Anthony Joshua fight, he won those rounds convincingly, almost stopped Joshua in the last round. So yeah, I feel like Josh was not, historically been known as a fighter who can fight at full clip for 12 rounds. We saw against Carlos Takam, he faded. The Klitschko fight, we mentioned that he faded in those middle rounds in particular. He expended a lot of energy in the 9th round against Alexander Usyk. I felt like the 10th round was key. Usyk coming back out in that 10th round and sticking it on Joshua and throwing 100 punches in that round after Joshua really had the momentum in the 9th round. That was pivotal. If Joshua then goes and wins the 10th round and he gets those 2 rounds back to back, it was similar. There was a round in the first fight, I think it was the 6th or the 7th, where Joshua won a round, and it was Usyk had made a really good start, and then Joshua just started to nick a couple of rounds, and it was like, okay, he might be coming back into the fight, and Usyk just took that momentum away from him. I think it was the 7th round. So, and that just comes with being an experienced master boxer. You know when you need to bank around. You know when you need to stem the momentum of your opponent. And Usyk's just a master at doing that, and that's what he did. But no, to answer your original question, I appreciate I'm rambling.
You're not, man. Don't worry about it. It's good to listen to.
But he, I don't think the heat would have played any factor at all. No.
In terms of both guys' next move, I mean, Usyk pretty much said, I think he said to Sky, if it's not Fury, it's no one. So he wants Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury said he'd come out of retirement. I mean, if he was ever really retired, we don't know. But with Anthony Joshua as well, he's saying he wants to come back in December. What do you think is the next move for both guys?
Well, I think you've kind of answered the question on Alexander Usyk there. I think he wants Undisputed next. I'm quite friendly with Alex Krasiuk, of course, his promoter at K2 Promotions. He said to me that they'd already had a meeting and already had conversations with Frank Warren and Tyson Fury's people when they were over in the UK for the Joshua Usyk Joshua 2 press conference in London. So there's no reason, there's no promotional issues, no network politics that get in the way of that. Usyk is a promotional. Promotionally, he's tied with K2, who will do business with anybody. He doesn't have a network deal, so there's no issues there. Tyson Fury doesn't have any mandatories. I wonder if the WBA mandatory may be called. That's the one that's due next. The last time the mandatory was called by the WBA was Alexander Povetkin in September of 2018. But we all know that the governing bodies will do whatever works for their pocket. If there's a big undisputed title fight to be made, then I can't see a mandatory getting in the way of that. The IBF's been satisfied with Kubrat Pulev. We've seen Zhang and Hrgovic box. So Hrgovic has just become mandatory, so it's a year or so before that needs to be called. So yeah, I don't really see any obstacles for the undisputed. I was speaking to some people from Skill Challenge, who, of course, for the Saudi company who put on the show at the weekend, and they said that sometime between December and February of this/next year, that's cool season. Last time we were out in Saudi was Riyadh for Ruiz Joshua 2, and it was much cooler, much more manageable. They've got the World Cup in Qatar at the end of the year. I know people have kind of tried to put 2 and 2 together there, but my understanding and what I've been told by the Saudis is that's going to be between December and potentially February or kind of early spring next year. So yeah, I think that's excuse me. I think that's where Alexander Usyk sees his only fight, his next fight. I interviewed Krasiak after the fight. He gave that wonderful WWE style promo into the camera, which was brilliant. I've never seen Alex like that. It was amazing. And Joshua, I think, look, I saw somebody tweet shortly before I came on here. So, I think he needs a long rest. I don't think that at all. He's boxed 3 times since the end of 2019. He needs activity. There's been the pandemic, like big fights that have kind of been nearly made and then fallen through. And, it was going to be Joshua versus Fury. Then it was going to be Fury versus Usyk, and Joshua was going to take an interim fight. Like, I feel like he boxed well on Saturday night, and he's obviously now working with Robert Garcia and Angel Fernandez as opposed to Rob McCracken in the corner. So, another fight. I think they ideally would have had another fight before they boxed Usyk again. I know Otto Wallin was very close. I don't see that happening now because I think Joshua, having boxed Usyk back to back, that's 2 southpaw camps in a row. I think he'll want to fight an orthodox fighter, which kind of rules out Otto Wallin, Big Bang Zhang. That's a big fight in China if they could do that in the bird's nest. But yeah, I mean, Joshua's still going to be an extremely marketable fighter. He needs one top 15 win or whatever, and he'll go straight into, not even that, he'll be straight into the top 5 or whatever of every governing body anyway, because every governing body is going to want him to box for their title because of the money that he brings. Everyone's going to want a slice of that sanctioning pie. So I think that there's going to be a multitude of options for him. Andy Ruiz boxes Luis Ortiz on September the 4th. Can they make a deal between PBC, Eddie Hearn, Al Heyman, DAZN? That kind of whole melting pot is very, very difficult to see that happening. The Deontay Wilder fight, as much as we all like it, it's full of promotional and political landmines. Just don't really see how that happens ever, unless Joshua kind of fights on Showtime, which is just not going to happen because he's now a special advisor with a stake in DAZN and what have you. So there are plenty of options, but all kind of with their own little asterisks. I think the Dillian White fight, the rematch as a pro, obviously Trilogy having boxed the amateurs, I think will always be there. But Dillian White, I believe, is fighting somebody else.
I've heard that as well. Yeah,
so that's not going to be available for him next. But I mean, again, it's those types of rematches, and indeed the Andy Ruiz trilogy, they're kind of always on the back burner to kind of fall back on, I suppose. So I think Joshua does need to get back in the ring before the end of the year. He lost to Alexander Usyk on Saturday. He lost to him last September, but they weren't massively punishing fights. He lost them both clearly. He didn't get knocked out. He didn't really get visibly hurt. I know he got buzzed a little bit in the first fight, I think in the 3rd round. Didn't really get buzzed on Saturday night. He got caught with some good shots, particularly late in the fight, but it was all exhaustion and he'd exerted so much energy. So I don't think he needs 6-12 months out. Like, I think he needs to get back in the gym as soon as possible, keep working with Robert Garcia and Angel Fernandez, and try and get an opponent locked in for the end of this year. I think that's what we need to see from Anthony Joshua, and I think that's what we will see from him.
Think it could be someone like Hrgovic to get straight in there with the IBF, possibly?
I think if you're Hrgovic now, you're an IB, you're the mandatory. You're not gonna. I mean, you're gonna sit on that. It depends. If Hrgovic wants to box for a world title, like, it's kind of weighing it up. Do you want to box for the world title, or you probably get more money fighting Anthony Joshua than you will fighting Alexander Usyk anyway? You don't get to fight for the world titles, but if you're the mandatory, you're not going to risk that spot. And also, if you're Anthony Joshua, look, I thought Hrgovic was poor on Saturday night. I'm a big fan of Filip Hrgovic. I think he's a very good fighter. I think the way he's stagnated as a pro is very concerning. I think he's not boxed the right level of opponents, and that's not necessarily his fault. I think they've tried to get him some opponents for that IBF mandatory slot, but he hasn't got them. But I couldn't name sort of half a dozen of his last 10 fights. I don't know who he's been boxing. He's been boxing people way below his level, and I feel you've been able to see that. But still, he can punch. He's a good fighter. I think if you're looking after Joshua, you probably don't want to put him in with a Filip Hrgovic anyway. So I think there's reasons for that fight not to happen on both sides. So I wouldn't say it would be Filip Hrgovic. I think, I don't know, maybe Chisora kind of, they have a little kind of fake beef and you get Joshua versus Chisora.
Oh gee, God help that. I don't know if I want it, man. Chisora's punch resistance at this stage, I don't. That would look ugly, really ugly.
Yeah, it's not a fight that I would like to see, but also you could keep it all in house. Chisora's with 258. He's always spoken about wanting to fight Anthony Joshua. So yeah, maybe that.
Maybe that. What do you think? What do you say to the people who've been, AJ, what you did after the fight? Yeah, he deserves a bit of criticism for that. But the people who were saying his performance was poor and that he was overhyped, I mean, I seen someone on Talksport say that today, and I was like, "What fight did you watch, mate? Seriously, that's probably the best I've seen him. He just fought a special fighter."
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Joshua, he always evokes an extreme amount of criticism for he's scrutiny, isn't it? He's a big money fighter.
Mm.
He's a big name in the division. He's always going to get, extremes. People are always going to say that he's either fantastic or he's shit. There's very rarely that you're going to get kind of an in between with him, and that's just due to who he is, what he's been able to do in the sport over the last 10 years. He's achieved an awful lot, and he evokes a lot of discussion and he evokes a lot of emotion from people. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I thought he boxed very well. He just boxed a guy who's better than him, and there's no shame in that. Like, it's very easy for people to say go in there and stick it on him, but you're talking about a former European Games gold medalist, a former world champion world amateur gold medalist, Olympic gold medalist, undisputed cruiserweight, heavyweight. This is a unique, special talent. Alexander, he might be the best heavyweight in the world. Fury, I think
Very much
now
so.
he's never retired anyway, but like I think he holds that distinction now, but he's still Usyk could very well be the best heavyweight in the world. We need to see that fight to know for sure, but he could be the number one guy, and losing to the number one guy. And look, he was in the fight on Saturday night. I think he got beat clear, but he was in the fight. Less so, I think, the first fight, but he didn't get disgraced in those fights, and you're fighting a generational talent. So, yeah, I mean, you're always going to get people. What was it on Talksport?
Yeah, it was some guy on Talksport. Was basically he was on with Laura Wood, and he was having a go at how AJ performed. Not after the fight, in the fight. I was like, mate, what fight were you watching? That's the best I've ever seen him.
Yeah, it was certainly, in my opinion, it was the best performance I've seen from him. But I can understand why people would say, it could be the Klitschko fight or what have you. But yeah, I thought he was very good. But you're always going to get people like that.
Oh yeah.
If you're calling into Talksport to slag up Anthony Joshua, you probably don't have an awful lot else to do. So
No, definitely not. Well, one thing I got to big you up on this is this. I thought Usyk won this fight pretty clearly. For some reason, it was split decision, right? Glenn Fellman scored this fight 115, 113, bizarrely to AJ. In fact, he actually had AJ winning 5 of the first 6 rounds. I don't know how he had that, but he did. You are probably one of the first people I've ever seen who went and actually interviewed him after the fight. He didn't give much away in it, but tell us about that. Tell me, was he kind of taken aback by you coming up to him and asking for an interview, or was it just when the camera stopped rolling, did he maybe say anything else?
no, he didn't say anything else. I think I think he was taken aback. Yeah. It's not often that you get the opportunity to do something like that. I think it's in my time of working in boxing, sort of 6 or 7 years. It's the first time that I've ever seen like judges after a fight just sort of being around, and I kind of took the opportunity, man, took the shot. I think we all I know you're a hardcore boxing fan as I am, as a lot of people who we're watching this are, and we all talk about the fact that fighters risk their life. People talk about it like it's a cliche. It's not. People like fighters risk their livelihoods, their entire lives. What Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk have been through in their careers in different respects, but particularly Usyk in the last 6 months, and you score the fight. What? How do you score it
Mm,
7 rounds to 5? I think you should have to have some level of accountability. You should have to explain those things. And I understand that judges can't, which is why he deferred everything to his supervisor. It wasn't just because he didn't know, it's because I
mm,
don't think they're supposed to talk about things like that. But I said to his supervisor, are you happy with how he scored the fight? He waffled and kind of gave his version of it and said, it was a close fight and it's what you like. That's bullshit, because it's not what you like. There are very clear scoring criteria that you score a boxing match on. It's not what you like, and sometimes you might prefer this and you might prefer that. No, it's not. But yeah, it was it was kind of one of those spur of the moment bits of content that come around once in a blue moon, and I seized the opportunity to jump on it. And look, I felt like I was respectful enough. I was
oh
quite
yeah.
direct in my questioning, because
I think he was more shocked that there was actually someone interviewing him, more so
Mm.
than what you were asking him.
Yeah, and I think that was probably it. He was taken aback by it. But look, Glenn Feldman has had some very interesting scorecards in the past. You can search judges' scorecard history in the past, and you can have a look at some of the cards that he's given in his time. And it's not an isolated incident. And it should, I don't know, say one of the other judges kind of had it a draw or something. You could end up with a split draw, and you've got Alexander Usyk, who's fought through whatever he's had to fight through in the Ukraine over the last few months, and then all of a sudden he gets jobbed because that's what it was. There's no logical way that anybody could score that fight for Anthony Joshua. I saw that somebody said that Steve Bunce scored it for Anthony Joshua as well. I also saw somebody say that Steve Bunce was cheering Anthony Joshua on from ringside, which, as an impartial member of the media, is outrageous. You shouldn't be doing that.
You shouldn't do that.
You sit there and you objectively watch the fight, whether you're media or whether you're a judge or whatever. So there's no logical explanation for scoring that fight to Anthony Joshua. Gross incompetence, corruption, whatever you want to call it. There's no way that you can score that fight for Anthony Joshua. I thought he boxed very well. I gave him 4 rounds, and I felt like it was either 4 rounds or 3 rounds. If somebody wants to say they scored it 7 rounds to 5, I can kind of swallow that. I don't agree with it, but I can swallow it.
Do I.
But giving it 7 rounds to 5 for Anthony Joshua is outrageous, and I feel like it was a rare opportunity to try and get some kind of justification and some kind of clarification on how they scored that fight. I don't think we necessarily got that, but I think it was it was a nice little clip anyway.
It was a once off. It was a once in a blue moon kind of interview, because I didn't expect to see that. When I seen it, I was like, if only we could get this more often, because there's a lot of judges I would love to see interviewed after a fight. And I find it quite strange. Sometimes a referee will get interviewed after a fight if they've had a really poor showing, but we're not allowed to interview a judge, which I kind of find even stranger. Sometimes the referee be interviewed in the broadcast, like Lawrence Cole, I think, a few times.
Yeah, it's happened in the past. Yeah, it has happened in the past, but it's very rare that you get the judges to do it. And it just, I don't know, it's just one of those moments. I heard him talking, I turned around, I was like, oh, Glenn Feldman's there. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And we interviewed Lomachenko, and the first thing Lomachenko said was, how could a judge score that round 7 rounds to 5? Split decision. How? It's a disgrace. And it is absolutely true. You're messing with people's livelihoods. These fighters risk their lives in the ring, and okay, I'm not kind of saying it's a brown envelope job and corruption and stuff, but it's gross incompetence. And if you're that incompetent that you felt that fight was 7 rounds to 5 to Anthony Joshua, you should have to face the music. You should have to justify. I did ask his supervisor, will you be asking Glenn to rescore the fight and watch the fight? And he said no, he doesn't think that there's any need to. So I don't know. It's always very much a closed shop, things like that, and it's a little bit of an old boys club. And when you get the opportunity to try and peek behind the curtain, I think try and do that. But I don't imagine it being a regular feature of what we do, and I don't imagine it's going to happen again anytime soon. But it was good to get that one little nugget in on fight night.
Before we finish up, I have 2 things, kind of boxing related. One is, what was the experience like? Not the fight, but just the whole experience over there with everything, the event. What was that like being part of it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been to Saudi before for boxing. I've not been to Jeddah before. I went to Riyadh to watch Ruiz Joshua 2. There was an event in Jeddah before with Callum Smith and George Groves that I was unable to make it to. But look, I felt like it was it's not too dissimilar for me to a normal fight week, because I say normal fight week, but like a fight week in the UK, because I get up in the morning, I jump on my laptop straight away, and I spend the whole day working, and then eventually we'll go back to the hotel, get some terrible food at 2 o'clock in the morning, and do it all again. So it's not wildly dissimilar. Obviously, the temperature and the heat and stuff was different, and it was very difficult to kind of like, we got there at 1:30 in the morning. It was 35 degrees. And so, like, you're standing there waiting for an Uber and you're just sweating. And I was thinking, I mean, I'm not a beacon of physical health. Like, I'm it's kind of stood there thinking, how am I going to do like 9 days here? But look, it was different. But like, a lot of the stuff that I was doing, it doesn't really matter whether it's in Jeddah or whether it's in Manchester or London or Vegas or whatever it is. A lot of it's the same. The Saudis were very, very respectful. Skill Challenge were very helpful with myself. Last time we went out there, it was a matchroom promoted event, so I think I knew a lot more of the people who were kind of making the decisions and doing the things. Whereas this time, I do have some contacts with Skill Challenge over in Saudi. But shout out to Fadi if he's going to watch this. Fadi, I can't remember his surname because I've had like 2 hours sleep. But he was brilliant. He was a channel called Boxing Arabia. He was like the talent manager for Skill Challenge. He was extremely helpful. But yeah, largely, mate, to be fair, for me, it was by and large the same, as a normal fight week, just a bit grander and a lot hotter.
Just a bit grander and a lot hotter. Well, I found the first time I did an event, which was Joyce Hammer, I was absolutely shattered, and that was in London, and nowhere near as hot, and nowhere near as probably kind of full on as that was. And I absolutely can imagine how tired you are right now. Last thing, obviously, Boxing Social was your baby for many, many years, but now it's ID Boxing. Do you want to tell us? I'm sure most people, I think you're nearly at 20K subs now, but do you want to let, in case anyone doesn't know, do you want to plug it, let people know on here?
That's very kind of you. Thanks very much. Yeah, no. So we launched ID Boxing 4 weeks ago today. We actually bought so Ben Faruqi, who is now my head of digital over at ID Boxing. He had a channel, Boxing News TV. Of course, I wanted Ben to come and work with me. I've known Ben for many, many years, and he's brilliant at his job. He's a good friend of mine as well, which always helps. But in order for him to come and work for us, he can't have his own channel. I think the channel that they had had like 8,500 subscribers. Been going for quite a while. So we bought his channel from him. It kind of serves both purposes. Gets rid of his channel so there's not a conflict of interest, and also we have a platform that's ready to go. So we launched 4 weeks ago. We're up at like 19 and change now. So yeah, it's gone very well. I think people do get hung up a little bit too much on subscribers. What matters is kind of your reach. Are people watching your videos? Are people coming back? Like that's more important to me than subscribers. But yeah, I've been very happy with how it's gone. I set myself some pretty lofty ambitions and targets ahead of going to Saudi, and we were able to hit them, which I was very pleased about. And it seems like the reaction has been very, very strong, and people have enjoyed what we're doing, which means a lot to me. I had kind of 6 months of, I wouldn't say not working. I was doing a lot of stuff in the background and doing, I was not quite as busy as I was when I was working before, but it wasn't like I was sitting around doing nothing. But getting back over these last 4 weeks and since the launch, the response has been really, really good. And that's what I want to do. I want to make content that people enjoy. I'm a boxing nut. I watch everything, and I try and consume as much content as I can. So I want to make stuff that I like and people enjoy as well. We're trying to just diversify a little bit, offer a little bit for everybody, casuals, hardcores. We'll try and give everything. So it's kind of, I said about it in my previous job. I wanted to make a one-stop shop for boxing, and that's not changed. The goals are very much the same, but I feel like with myself, my team, my investors, Kipling House Investments, I feel like we're doing a great job. Not to pat myself on the back, I feel like we've started really well.
We all
And
have to.
but yeah,
I think I'm doing a great job as well. So there you
you
go.
are
We can
doing
all pat
great
ourselves
job
on the
doing
back.
boxing. And while we're on that, I
Cheers.
want to thank you for your patience throughout the last week, because I know that we've been
Mate,
trying to get
I
this
know.
done. And there was a couple of one night that we were kind of booked in to do it. I ended up kind of sitting next to Roberto Duran for an hour, so I was kind of like, I sort of messaged you. I was like,
That's like one of them moments where it's like you cannot break away from that,
I
no
can't
matter
leave
what. Like
Roberto
you
Duran.
cannot.
I don't care if there's a fire. I'm not leaving. I'm
Yeah,
staying with him until the end. We're going to burn together.
yeah,
But
yeah. Your wife's having a baby. Can't you not just wait another hour?
yeah, but no, yeah, as I say, I'm very grateful for your patience and your understanding throughout the last week. I've wanted to come on and do this. Obviously, I was with Jamie with Punch Perfect a
Big up
couple
to
of
him.
weeks ago or a week ago now. You're both doing really well, and it's great to see. I think like boxing, we kind of forget that boxing is not a mainstream sport. It is kind of a marginal sport, and we need to all help each other. I feel like it's important for people to kind of give support and show support where possible. And you're doing some great work. So thanks very much for having me. Yeah, just to kind of round things off, I am obviously ID Boxing now, kind of looking to push that forward as much as I can. So once you've dropped Gman a follow and a subscribe, if you could do the same at ID Boxing, I'd be very appreciative. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. I'm really glad that we got this done, and hopefully it's not the last one.
Definitely. No, definitely. And I'll pin the link to ID Boxing in the comment section of this video, just in case anyone who's watching this hasn't already gone over. Of course, I'll plug Rob's channel any day of the week. Mate, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I can't thank you enough for doing this. And I'm glad we got to do it. Any closing thoughts? Any closing words?
No, none really. I think I've kind of waffled on for long enough now. My missus has come down. As I said to you
Yeah.
beforehand, we managed to kind of sneak this in while she was having a little sleep. So yeah, I better get off here before I start having to use my Usyk head movement. I have to dodge out of the way of a couple of great shots that's going to be coming my way. But no, thanks very much for having me again. And yeah, everybody who's watching, please look out for more boxing content, both from myself and ID Boxing and Gman, the man himself. drop us both a follow, drop us both a sub, and turn those notifications on.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. And everyone watching, peace.